Hey everybody, this is Rick Steele Customs coming at you from the local Copart here in El Paso, Texas. And I'm here looking for a donor vehicle in which to take the quarter panel and B-pillar door hinge assembly from a 2007 Yukon that I found here. It looks like a perfect candidate for my 2012 Yukon. And I'll be doing some cutting today. This car was hit right front, but the both sides actually are perfect. In case somebody else needs a part off this thing. Well, actually, no, this side's pretty trash. Never mind. So anyway, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be making an incision probably right around here, and then down, and then up here at the top, and then right around here, and then all along here, and along here, and cut this baby off. This one's really straight, so this is going to make my repair job go so much smoother. And then once I get it back to the shop, I'll be taking off all these spot welds and just using the outer skin. I don't need to use the inner skin, but you know what, it might even be easier for me just to use the inner skin as well as the outer skin. I will be cutting spot welds though along here, because I'm not going to use anything from the inside, because from the inside pretty much I'm good, except for it's pushed in a little bit here. But once I get this panel off, I will pull it back out and she'll be as good as new. Anyway, let me get to cutting. What's going on, YouTube? Rick Steele Customs coming at you today, and picking up where I left off at the Junkyard. I went there and I cut off the door pillar and the rocker panel. Got it all off as one unit. Was testing out my new battery-powered Sawzall. Worked great. It's a Flex Sawzall. Worked really good. And I was able to cut virtually the entire panel off until I got down to this last basically 2 feet of section. I did bring a backup because I wasn't sure how long the battery was going to last on the Flex. So I brought two DeWalt batteries and my DeWalt Sawzall. And believe it or not, they were fully charged batteries. I was only able to cut an additional foot. So I was left from about right here to right here with no battery. And no other means of cutting it except for a pair of vice grips. And I peeled it like an old can opener. So in any case, I did get it off. I managed to damage the rocker panel, but no big deal. This is the forward section. I don't need all of that. I cut a little more than I needed. And as you can see, the rocker panel itself, it's damaged to right about here is where it begins, the damage. So I'll be cutting right here and replacing from right here back. This is all perfect. So basically, I'll be cutting about all this off anyway, so I don't need that. Always cut more than you need. Never cut less than you need. These are the doors that I picked up the day before at the Junkyard. I got them installed. Now, what I did notice is that this B-pillar is slightly back, very slightly, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, or an 1/8 of an inch rather. I just shimmed it out a little bit, which was necessary in order to get the door to latch, but the door does shut, so that's good. But I'm going to be replacing the outer skin on the B-pillar anyway, and that will correct it, so I shouldn't need the shim any longer once I replace this outer skin. The inner skin is fine. I'm not going to do any kind of replacement of this. I'm going to separate the inner skin from that B-pillar, and the top of the floor pan area is perfect, even all the way back. As you can see, it's perfect up here. This piece is straight, the pinch weld, so this is actually even pretty good. But I am going to be replacing it. I'm going to be cutting the spot welds along this pinch weld seam right here, and then coming up the side. I have yet to determine where I'm going to be sectioning the B-pillar. This is dented in from whatever was hit, and I'm guessing could have been a rock. Maybe somebody thought, oh, I'll take it off-road or whatever, but they hit something there, and it shoved the rocker panel in a good way. But this is a hollow rocker panel. The backside is actually in really good shape, so I'm not going to be cutting away any of the backside panel. Instead, I'll be pulling that back out. And once I get the outer skin on, then I'll pull it out and go ahead and re-spot weld it. And that, once the outer panel is in place, it'll show me how much I need to pull that panel out to mate up again with this new outer skin. But as you can see right here, it slopes in. This is this section here. This section is basically squared. So I'm going to be replacing all the way behind this pinch weld right here. I'm going to be removing these spot welds as high up as I haven't determined yet, but I'll be removing those. I'll be saving this outer section. Once I cut these spot welds, this will probably spring out, and then I'll just feed this in from behind. I am going to remove this outer section, and I'll feed that in from behind, and I'll re-spot weld it. So I'm pretty lucky that the damage was actually localized to the rocker panel and not so much on the B-pillar. There is damage to the B-pillar, and I'll show you that right now. It's actually right here. I don't know if you can see, but there's a bulge right here. The hinge does not sit flush. As you can see, it does not sit flush. There's a gap. And the hinge is slightly cantered backward, like this. It's supposed to be perfectly flush. Like the top one. The top one is pretty flush. This is very good shape right here. So I'll probably make my cut somewhere above that. But yeah, that's still yet to be determined. But yeah, that little bulge right here, this is not factory. And you can see the paint, where the paint is broken off, because paint uses hardener. It's non-flexible, and it'll show you where the damage is. Kind of like up on the top of this rocker panel. You can see the paint is completely flexed and broken away. That shows you where the panel was bent. Okay, now if we look at this undamaged panel, this is where the bulge is on the vehicle. This panel is perfectly smooth. There's a hump here. I could cut just above this and then graft it on from that point down, which is something I'm probably going to wind up doing. You want something that stands out and is on the same as the replacement panel as it is on the vehicle, so you know where to go.
Also bear in mind, guys, I've never ever done this type of repair before, and all the best plans are subject to change when you're actually attacking the job.
This is where I'm talking about. So I'll probably cut right above here. Or I could even cut just below there. But there's a heavy bracket, reinforcement bracket on the inside, which I'm not going to want to cut. See, I don't know if you can see it, but this is the bracket I'm talking about. That's a very thick bracket. Depends on how high up it goes, because I really don't want to mess with that. But anyway, that's why I say you have to be determined. I'll make a hole higher up just so I can look in and see where that bracket ends, and I'll cut just above that bracket. But anyway, the door, I adjusted it forward as far as I could. You can see this line right here, this marker line. This is where the outer edge of the door was, and now it's right there, but it still needs to go farther forward. Probably about 2 or 3/8, because it's hitting here. And I cannot go any further forward, as you can see by the paint on this bolt. The hinge is as far forward as it'll go. I could go forward on this top one a little bit more. I could even oval out and elongate these hinge holes, which would allow more adjustment. But as you can see, when I shut the door, this gap is perfect. This gap is perfect. Down here is perfect. Up here, it is not. So I'm definitely going to have to do some reworking. I might even have to open this gap up by drilling and cutting a hole, or using the width of the cutoff wheel. I can cut all the way down here and then pinch it back together and then weld it. That will give me my gap. I do not want to do it that way. That is an absolute last resort. So what I'm going to do is install the B-pillar and rocker panel, remove the door, and then after this is back installed, reattach the door, and then see where I stand as far as the gap is concerned. I'm going to have to paint the quarter panel anyway to eliminate all the hailstone markings. The cool thing is, the other side did not get any hailstones. And I've got to paint the doors anyway. I've got to paint the rocker and B-pillar anyway, so I'm going to buy enough paint and basically shoot this whole side. Yeah, I'll even do the front fender and the hood. I'll redo the hood too. The hood took a lot of hail, as you can see. Now, normally I would just replace the hood with one that hasn't been hailed on from the junkyard, or a aftermarket hood. But if I went that way, I would want one with a nice scoop on it, cowl induction style. But right now it's just I just want to get it done. So a little bit of Bondo work on the hood, blocking, sanding, priming, and then repainting the hood it'll be as good as new. But anyway, I'm going to get back to it. Oh, before I go on to the next step, I'm going to show you what I'm going to be using to cut the spot welds. These are spot weld cutters. So I'll be using these. Oh, can't open it with one hand. But anyway, so I'll show it to you in the next step if I remember. Okay, with the rear door off, you can see the extent of the damage done to the quarter panel. This rubber seal, for instance, on the door is actually supposed to be making contact with this portion of the rocker panel. So there's quite a bit of gap right here. It's completely shoved in here. This is supposed to be straight all the way across here. So that's how much it's shoved in. All of this gap is not supposed to be there. It's supposed to be flush against this aluminum ruler that I'm using. So that shows you how far shoved back it is. And we're going to fix all of that. It'll be like it was never hit.
Also, guys, if you like this type of material and content that I'm doing here on YouTube, I'd really appreciate a thumbs up and a subscription because this video is going to be in at least 3 different videos. So if you want to see all 3 parts of this video and be notified of the newly uploaded videos, go ahead and click that subscribe button and hit that bell icon, and I appreciate a thumbs up.
Here's my replacement. It's basically almost prepped, ready to go on. I'm going to be utilizing this entire section. And as you can see, same thing I did on the door. But you can actually see the rubber seal from the bottom of the door. From opening and closing all the years, it actually rubbed off the paint. So the seal is definitely supposed to be contacting the rocker panel. And then if you take the ruler, you can see it sits flush all the way across the bottom of the panel. So the only thing that remains to be done is I have to drill out these holes here from the former spot welds, like so. The bottom has already been taken care of. These are all drilled out, and I'll be reusing these same holes to spot weld it back to the body floor pan of the car. I do have a little bit of sectioning to do. I'm going to remove most of this, just don't know how much yet. And then I'm going to be keeping from here down to approximately here. So basically, I'm going to draw a line here and cut and remove everything below. And then I'll be spot welding the section that's currently on the truck back to this tower. There's also an inner structure that you can see sandwiched. Well, maybe you can't, but there's an inner structure. This actually bolts to it, this hand rest. So I will be rebolting it on. I'll remove these bolts, put the new panel on, and then bolting this on, and it'll hold the panel secure. You can probably see it right there. The inner structure I'm talking about, sandwiched. Just like a piece of bologna between two slices of bread. And anyway, so basically everything from here up is good, but I'm going to go just a little bit further right here, because that's where the sandwich basically ends. Right here you can see a gap, and that gap runs all the way through. You can actually see the structure here from where I cut off of this one. I did not cut this, I cut just above it. There's a slight gap, and that's where I'm going to cut it on the truck. This is the inner structure I was talking about. This panel here is the inner structure. So I'm going to have to drill with the spot weld cutter, which is what this little thing is. This is a spot weld cutter. Goes in the drill bit. First I have to drill a pilot hole. And then, because these spot welds are done from the factory, they're done by computer. I don't know if the truck that I pulled the donor panel off of was made in the same facility as this vehicle. This one I believe was made in, well no, I know this truck was made in Texas. That one could have been made in Canada. Which is fortunate for me because these holes are not identical to the holes on that one. So with any luck, once I drill these out with the spot weld cutter and I line that panel up against the original pinch weld, I should have steel behind it, so it'll make my job a lot easier when I go to spot weld this thing back together. If this truck and the donor vehicle were made in the same facility here in Texas, this is all done by computer, so it would have been precisely in the exact same spots, and then I'd have a problem filling the spot weld holes. This little plus mark here, this little plus mark here, I think that's got something to do with the alignment of the computerized spot welding machine. I could be wrong. I'm not sure. If you know for sure, let me know in the comments. So see, here's another spot where there's a little plus sign. But in any case, yeah, I wanted to use the spot weld cutter here, here, on all these, and also on the lower portion. I want to use a spot weld cutter. And this section here, I'm going to go ahead and drill all the way through in order to remove this backside portion down, because I'm going to be using it on the donor panel all the way up. I don't want to have to cut it because that'll make it weaker, but I'm going to be welding it here and spot welding it here all the way down, so it should be a really strong panel. Plus I'm going to put a backing plate on the inside. But in any case, I'm going to get to drilling out these holes. You guys don't want to watch that. It's very time consuming, very tedious. And everybody's seen a hole drilled in steel at least once in their life. So anyway, just wanted to show what happens when you cut all the spot welds. You're going to release a lot of built up tension from the impact. Steel has a memory, and it's going to want to pop back out to where it was when it was stamped from the factory. So I cut the spot welds, and I gained about a 1/4 inch gap, which is fine, nothing wrong with it. Also, you guys want to put down some kind of protection for your interior. This is a fiberglass welder's blanket. Went ahead and I drilled all these spot welds out. I'm not going to be reusing the steel on the inside, but I will be reusing this steel here. And the reason I'm using this steel here is because the alternative would have been to cut it up here, which would have been nice because I could have actually removed the rubber up here and hid the welds behind this molding, but then I would have had to remove the molding. This molding is actually glued on from the factory, and then I'd have to hassle gluing it back. And when I weld this, you won't be able to see the weld when I'm done. And it also protects from damaging the headliner with any kind of sparks from the welder getting up in there, or even worse, causing a fire. Closest I'm going to get to it is right here, which I'll use some kind of a metal shield to hold right here to keep any sparks from going in. Not that I get a lot of sparks, but just as a precautionary measure. And here's some more springing out from the impact. I cut all this. I'm going to have to remove this piece here. There's another spot weld I got to take out down there. And I'm going to remove the center section completely, and then all I have to do is remove the spot welds along the bottom of the rocker panel rather. You want to be very cautious because there is fuel lines and actual radiator coolant lines running along the inside of that quarter panel, so use extreme caution. I guess the best bet would be to actually physically remove them, detach them completely from the vehicle before doing this. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be just extremely careful and work around it. It shouldn't be an issue because they're protected by the inside of this quarter panel. As long as you don't cut through, which I'm not going to cut through, at least I'm not planning on it, it'll be okay. But another good thing about this, you can see that this piece right here, which was attached to this inner reinforcement, actually slips over this bottom floor pan. And you can see that right here on the donor piece. So when I go to install this, I'm just going to slip it over the floor pan metal, and it'll actually hold it exactly where I want it. And then I'll just crimp this back together and then spot weld it. I'm just going to tack it into place once I get it up and on. That way I can close the doors, mount them, and make sure that it's in the perfect location and the gaps in the doors are perfect. But as you can see, I've got several more spot welds to cut. I also need to cut on the inside of this right around here all the way down, and I'm going to cut right across here and remove all this. This quarter panel section is actually shoved in a good inch or somewhere thereabouts. But once I cut this, it's going to pop back out as well. And since that panel is perfect, I'll know exactly where to tack it. And once I get the door center post back on, then I'll shut the door, make sure it's flush with the door, and it'll be good to go. Anyway, more drilling to go, so back to the salt mine. Okay, as you can see, I've got the damaged portion of the rocker panel and the B-pillar successfully removed. So, it's looking really, really good. You can see it's just slightly dented in right here, which will be just a little bit of effort to pull this out. And I will do that from the underside using a 2x4 and a sledgehammer. I'll put it behind this lip and then just pound on it until it comes out. I could even use a rubber mallet if I want. This all looks really good. And I used the spot weld remover to get rid of these spot welds, so I'll be grinding these flush, every single one of these little nubs. And when I put the donor panel back, put the donor panel on, I'm just going to have to grind these down flush, and then I'll have a nice flat surface in which to weld to, which will be fantastic. Also, you guys are going to want to remove any kind of insulation like this right here, because this stuff will ignite. This will ignite, so remove it. This is just plastic and foam for sound deadening. Just remove it, weld the panel on, forget it was ever there. This is the section of insulation that was right there. Definitely don't want that any longer. And if you really wanted to put it back, I guess you could. The back side of the panel there has openings in it. You can get a can of expansion foam and just feed it through the hole, which is right here. Feed it through the hole, fill it in with the expansion foam you can buy over at Lowe's or Home Depot. Any place you like. Let's compare the two. This is actually the first time I'm ever doing this, in case anybody's wondering. We're probably going to have to do a little bit of pulling on the top. Unless that's the way they designed it. Looks like the way they designed it. Because this goes in right there. And it's straight right here. It's weird. I'll know a lot more when I go to fit this. When I go to fit the rocker on there, what I got to do. Anyway, whatever I gotta do, I'll get it perfect. Anyway, that's all for today. Get back on this tomorrow.